Hello everyone and welcome. This week we will continue with the Shadows over Camelot series, and this time I will cover the Saxons. These are enemies which, if they come on the board 4 times, a war occurs. I will explain what that entails during the gameplay session. Maybe. But for now, let us focus on painting these 4 miniatures. And for that, I start off with burnt sienna, and I cover all the wooden elements of the miniature. The shield, the axe shaft, and the sword scabbard. Once the wooden elements have their base coat, it's time to move on with the remainder of the base coat, starting with his fur armor. For this I used a different sienna, this time raw sienna, as I wanted him to be as realistic as possible, and I will use quite a lot of shades of brown, and I'm surprised at how well this miniature came out without actually going through multiple colors. I like when they're sort of realistic instead of, all sorts of pigments and colors. It just seems believable. While I finish the base coat for his fur armor, let me talk a little bit about the progress of this video, so to speak. I am actually as late as I ever was with editing and posting this video. I'm literally recording this one day before I post it, and this is a first for me. So let me take this opportunity to actually apologize if in the coming weeks I may be a little late with the videos. Now I will keep trying to make one video per week, and I will keep trying to have the same Friday schedule. Unfortunately, some of the projects I'm working on will require much more of my attention than painting miniatures. For the skin tone, I went with Flayed One Flesh once more. I'm starting to really like this one. And then later on I will be shading it using Agrax Archshade to darken it a bit and to give shadows to the recesses. And now back to the reason why I was a little late with all the editing for this video. While the full process of painting it can be done actually quite fast now, I'm getting better at this. Editing the video took longer because every weekday I was a little bit stressed about finishing the big project that I'm working on right now. It's not related to miniatures or anything like that, and I plan to show it to you very soon because I didn't start this channel only to show off miniatures. Rather, this will also contain a lot of DIY. And yes, that is do it yourself. And I'm about to start one of those projects. Again, soon. I know you're getting bored of hearing soon from me, but trust me, we're getting there. For all the little leather straps around him on his wrists, belt, and sword scabbard, I went with the third shade of brown, burnt umber, to really make them pop out, to stand out against all the other browns that I used. And this really shows off the different textures and different types of materials that he's wearing. And now with all the major areas of the model base coated and all the leather straps done, which were technically the very first details, it is time to start handling the details. And for his helmet, I wanted to do a bronze helmet, so I went with Runelord brass, but with a iron trim and some ivory horns. Yes, I know, Vikings didn't have horns, but he's not technically a Viking, he's a Saxon. Something. You get what I'm saying. Anyway, again, Runelord brass for the helmet and a lead belcher for the trim, plus ivory for the horns. I keep getting ahead of myself, so let's get back to it. Before I do all that lead belcher on the trim and ivory on the horns, I decided to paint all his under armor, which was clearly a chainmail, with lead belcher. And also the axe head will also be covered. I'm not getting ahead of myself. I'm pretty sure that that is going to be covered here. Alright, that's it. And of course I used previously, before, without commenting, the same Runelord brass on the sword scabbard and the metal link between the axe head and the shaft. Yes, apparently I keep forgetting what paints I used, so I'm sorry for this mistake, but the color I used for the skin tone was actually Kislev flesh, and it actually had a good reason for doing that, because from the little thing that I know about Kislev, which is, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm really bad at this, is a country or a region in old world Warhammer fantasy, which is in the north, I think, and it's full of barbarians and something like that. Something, something. Anyway, that's the reason why I chose to give the Saxon this flesh tone. Please correct me if I'm wrong and you actually do know the answer. I wanted to do the rim of the shield with lead belcher so that it appears that it's, banded in iron, and also the axe head in the same lead belcher. And later on, I will also do the inlays for the shield with iron. I didn't want to do them with gold as I did for other fantasy characters, because it would have made sense for a barbarian to have his shield painted with gold or silver or anything like that. In addition to the horns, which I will paint with ivory a bit later on, I wanted to do the trims of his boots the same white color. Sort of link the top and the bottom of the miniatures with the same color somewhere. And I chose this one. I also wanted this warrior to be in his prime, and so I painted his hair completely black, despite him, being with a full beard and long mane. I'm still working out on how to paint hair, and I think I should dry brush with a gray color or something like that, or at least highlight it to give it a more realistic look. Hair does not look uniformly one color. I saw a few tutorials, but then again, I'm aiming for tabletop quality, and I really don't have the skill yet to do, like multiple strands of hair or stuff like that. And fortunately, with the glossy finish that I have on my paints, it actually comes out if you look closely once, even once they're dried. The colors actually have a bit of shine to them in certain spots. Like a natural highlight without me actually painting the highlight. I did, however, wanted to try my hand at painting his eyebrows, and I think they all came out looking really, really good. Tiny little lines across his eyebrows really make it stand out. And finally I get to the helmet trim, which as I mentioned I paint with lead pilcher. But also I noticed he has a nose guard, and that one should also be ironed, so I painted that as well. And of course, you know, tiny fixes. When working on such fine detail, I find that I make a lot of mistakes. Also, I think I might need new glasses. And then it's time for the shield inlays, again with lead pilcher to make them stand out against the brown of the wood. For the final step, I wanted to shade this model, and I wanted to shade him completely because he has a lot of surface areas with a lot of textures, and they really needed to pop out. So I went with Agrex Earthshade over any non-metallic surface, and this one I went and made sure that it got in all of the recesses and not pulled on any of the raised surfaces. For every metallic surface, I came back with Nuln Oil this time. Again, applying the same technique to make it pop out. This made basically everything, every shadow intensified. Basically, any recess was darker, and then really stands out. Now, normally, the next step after shading would be to let it dry and then again come back with the same colors to highlight everything, go over all the raised surfaces. But I think it looks great just the way it is, with a few touches here and there where it was really dark, and it seemed that it was almost too the color was lost entirely. But yeah, overall I think this came out a very realistic miniature, and of course I applied the same for all four of them. I especially love how the shade made every single um, wood plank of his shield stand out. It fills all those lines perfectly, accentuating them. For a perfect example of how shade helps you, that shield before and after, that is the standard. And that's it. I will let you enjoy the final shots, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with a friend. I will see you in the next one.